Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel, Gaming with Estefania. I'm Estefania. Welcome to this fourth video in the series of videos on terrain and landscaping. We are going to dive into these tools, the terrain stamp tool. Let's see how they can be helpful to create an awesome terrain in Planet Sim. Let's begin. First, when we go here to the terrain stamp tool, we will see 5 options over here. And we will also see many different settings that we can customize. We will go through them one by one. What is the purpose of the terrain stamping tools, you may ask? The purpose of the terrain stamping tools is to create a particular shape in the terrain by just clicking on the terrain. They're super helpful. For example, here if I click on the cube, I can just add this specific shape in the terrain. Instead of doing that with the sculpting tools, which might be a lot harder to do, I can just do that with just one click with the terrain stamp tool. And then I can, of course, apply some of these sculpting effects. Like, for example, I could, if I bring the size down, I could smooth out the edges and just create this type of terrain. The possibilities are truly endless with terrain stamp tools. We have a cube, we have a sphere, we also have a cylinder like this, we have a pyramid, which can also be helpful, and we have a ramp. Ramps are particularly helpful if you want to create some elevated terrains or different levels in your zoos. So these are the 5 options that we have right now in the game. And they're super helpful and you can customize them. Just like we can add terrain, we can also remove terrain with these tools, with the stamp mode. If we have the stamp mode on the plus symbol, then we can add terrain like we did over here. But if we want to remove terrain instead and sync the terrain, then we just need to click here on subtract terrain. And you can see that now the tool is showing me that I will be creating like a hole on the ground, a cube, but below ground. So if I click here, you can see that I have the opposite effect. Instead of adding terrain, I am removing terrain from the ground. And the same thing will happen with all of these shapes. Like a sphere, I will create something like this. With a cylinder, I will create something like this. With a pyramid, let's see what happens. With a pyramid, I will have the very tip over here at the bottom. I will create this shape over here that is narrower as I sink on the ground. And the ramp here is just sinking into the ground. So you can see these tools in both stamp modes. For these tools, we also have the angle snap option, which is also super helpful because we can rotate them. Let's go over here. And let's say that I have this tool in add terrain. We're going to add terrain now to show you how you can rotate the stamp tools. And if I press the C key on my keyboard, I can rotate it like this. I can just move this around and voila, I can just move this around exactly like I would like to have it, like this or like this, and you can see that the possibilities here are truly endless. But if I want to snap it to a particular angle, like rotate it 45 degrees or 25 degrees, then I can just toggle this on, enable this, and you will see that now when we rotate it, we are snapping to that particular angle. And that can make things easier or harder depending on your needs. So just choose exactly what you need and customize it. We can select 15, 30, or 45 degrees. We can also customize the height of this tool. Let me just go over here so we can continue modifying the terrain. If we go here to the height setting, we see that by default the height is 9 meters, at least here in my game. But if I bring this up, let's say to the maximum 20 meters, then I can add 20 meters of terrain over here. Or I can also subtract 20 meters below ground, like this. I can also select a value in between, like this, 13 meters. You can also make this even smaller, 4 meters. Like this, and you have a very shallow hole, and you can also have a very shallow platform over here. And you can also rotate the ramp, which is something that we usually do to create these elevated paths. Let's say that I have this ramp over here, and I created this subtly elevated terrain. If I move the ramp over here, you can see that now I am creating a sort of ramp that my visitors can use to access this elevated terrain. And if I flatten this to foundation, mixing this and combining it with the sculpting tool, then I can create something very unique. This is just an illustration of how you can combine the terrain stamping tools with the sculpting tools to create unique habitats. Terrain stamping tools are super helpful to build faster. And you may ask, when would subtracting the terrain be helpful? Well, let me show you something here. If we increase the height and we also increase the width over here, we can also increase the width in this setting. Let's just put both of them to the maximum value. No, the height, let me just adjust it a little bit. Let's say 14 meters. And let's rotate it over here. Now I have a perfect cube below ground. If I want to create a sunken habitat, then you can start like this with the terrain stamping tools and then use flatten to foundation. If you use flatten to foundation, then you will be able to flatten the surface here to that level where you have the terrain stamping tools. So that is very helpful because instead of just sinking the terrain with a push or pull tools of the sculpting panel, you just start from a stamp tool. You just set the height that you want to set here, and it's all really easy and quick, and then you just flatten everything to that level. This is also helpful if you want to create water. If you want to create a river or a lake or some water for your habitats, and you want to have a consistent depth, or you want to start leveling out the terrain, you can just do that and apply the water over here. And of course the ramps are also very helpful as well. Awesome! So these are the settings, height and width. We can also highlight hidden barriers and hidden paths like with the other terrain tools. And over here with the ramp, we also have another setting that we can customize, the slope. The slope is by default 20 degrees. So let me show you this. By default, we have 20 degrees. But if we want to increase this, you can see how the slope is increased. And right now we are at, let's say 40. This is the slope of the new ramp. And if we want to choose a lower setting, we can just bring this down to 10 degrees. That is also super helpful depending on your needs and how you need your ramps to be. So now you have a better understanding of how the terrain stamp tools work in Planet Zoo. Let me say that this is a very helpful set of tools. You will use them all the time, and I really recommend using them. You can also, for example, build on top of things that you've already built. Let's say something like this. Like this. Notice this right here. You can also connect different areas or parts of your terrain and create different levels in the terrain very easily. And you can also drag the tools vertically. If you press shift, you can also drag the tool here vertically like this and create some very unique shapes. And then you can also use like the terrain sculpting tools to make them look more realistic, like let's say smooth. Look at this. This looks really nice, right? I really love the terrain stamping tools. You can get some really cool looking shapes. Now you know how to use the terrain stamping tools in Planet Zoo. Let me know if you have any questions or what you think about these tools in the comments. Have a great day, and I will see you in the next video of this series.